Murph, we're here at Northstar. We just tasted two pretty interesting wines. Why don't you talk about this tasting, how it got set up, and what your impressions were?
Well, originally the tasting got set up because we've done comparison tastings. Like the last year and a half, we've had Northstar 2004 in blind tastings with Right Bank Bordeaux Merlots. And somewhere along the line, there was a couple bottles left over, and we said, you know, what are we going to do with these wines? And we decided what better way to use these wines than to share them with our club members. So tonight we had exclusive tasting, invitation only, to our club members, and we just tasted them. There wasn't anything we're trying to get out of it, but we tasted Petrus 2004 against Northstar 2004.
Now, I don't know if you can be unbiased since you made the Northstar, but what were your impressions of the two wines side by side?
Well, that's a good point for being unbiased, but it's somewhat like comparing apples and oranges. They're totally different wines, different regions. The Petrus, to me, you know, in my tasting, and you taste it as well, but I got a lot more tannin structure, maybe something that I wouldn't open up for a while. The 04 Northstar, very lush, fruit-driven, a very big wine, and not that we're trying to, you know, push price points and this and that, but $41 for Northstar and $875 on release for the Petrus. What did you think?
Well, I'm glad that I invested my money in my daughter's education and not into Chris.
I have purchased cars for less than this bottle of wine. Yeah. It was a delicious wine. You know, I'm not going to say it wasn't a good wine, but did it wow me, blow me away? And I'm absolutely biased, and I'm totally behind what we're doing here in Washington. We make some of the best wines in the world. We have the greatest growing region in the world, in my opinion, and I preferred the Northstar over the Petrus. We had 4 or 5 different wines from Right Bank, Merlot, mainly Merlot. The Cheval Blanc, I believe Blanc was like, it's, you know, part Cab Franc. Each tasting was different, and wines range from $300 to $700, $800. You know, and it wasn't specifically which wines these were we tasted against. I think, you know, the emphasis on that, what we were doing when we went to Chicago and New York and Seattle and all of them tasted, it was just like, here's Washington. We're exposing you to Washington, you know, Merlot. Here's Northstar Merlot. What do you think of this wine in a blind tasting compared to these other wines that are $300, $400, you know, $1,000 a bottle? Not that, you know, money matters, but we're in the same level as those wines at a more reasonable price, and that was the main focus, I thought, of those tastings, regardless of which wines we went against.
Let's fast forward 4 years. You guys are just wrapping up Harvest and Crush, and you know, you look a little tired. Tell us what you think of the fruit that you've seen.
08 was a great vintage. Merlot rocked. It was definitely a Merlot vintage. Cabs here and there. We had some really good cab that we came in. Some of it, you know, wasn't as good as others, because and one of the things we had was we had a freeze here in Walla Walla, a little bit of a frost up on Red Mountain also. That definitely affected the fruit. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more hang time on the cabs and some of the other varietals we were bringing in, Petit Verdot and Cab Franc. A little bit, you know, we were like a week behind in the vintage, and that affected it also. But, you know, the bottom line is the Merlots, what I'm seeing, and we're just starting to revisit them right now. We've gone through, you know, first racking, and we're looking at secondary fermentation. They're amazing. Big, lush wines, lots of color. I've never seen so much color in my years, and we track it. And the 08 vintage just looks like to be another spectacular vintage for Washington.
How long have you been with Northstar?
First vintage for me was 2000.
And that was as assistant winemaker?
Yeah, I worked for Gordie Hill, assistant winemaker, working up actually in Mattawa. And then I was here when this place was built in 2002.
Okay. Great. Anything else to add?
Keep supporting Washington wine. You know, we've got there's something going on here, and there's a lot of people that are passionate about what they're doing, and I think you see that it's expressed in the wines that you drink from Washington. And I go back to just like an agricultural based thing. I grew up on a farm, and I think a lot of us put our soul into it, and I think you can taste that in the wine. And thank you for your support.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.